Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Slashing prices, offensive festivals, and nuclear Harvey. Plus this day in history with Lennon Shot and our song of the day by Warm Digits on your Morning Monarchy for August 30th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, giving you another listener-supported blast of independent, non-commercial, alternative media. Glad you're here. Streaming live as always from the Peak Portland studios up here in Portland, Oregon. Hope you're doing well whenever, wherever you are. I'm not sure if anyone's in Colorado. We might be there in the next year or so. That's Citizens Gateway in the chat. We got Heart of California. We got all our buddies, Chef Jake and Matt and everybody else. A huge thanks to everybody that joins us. We are live weekdays, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time right here, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Each day of the week, we focus in on a different area of the news. Wednesdays, food, health, and environment news. We call it Food World Order, and I coined that phrase several years ago, and I'd like to think that it's slowly worked its way into the lexicon. Huge thanks to a couple of our latest supporters and donors and patrons. Again, I've talked about being a little in the weeds, a little behind, dealing with some website woes, and also just kind of behind on new music and patrons and supporters, which is probably the worst thing to be behind on. Huge thanks, Dan W. He is our latest patron at patreon.com/MediaMonarchy. And also a huge thanks to Santiago C. using PayPal. You can find PayPal, Patreon, also our post office box. And we got Bitcoin. It's all at MediaMonarchy.com/support. And as I like to say, if you can give a little, I can give a lot. Now, I'm actually going to do our Harvey coverage on this Food World Order episode at the end of the episode, because I think the coverage I've got for you leads perfectly into our Thursday coverage that we do. Plus, I don't know that you really need me to give you wall-to-wall coverage of Hurricane Harvey. Probably have that pretty well covered everywhere else in the world. So let's still glance at the breaking lame stream news, my friends. And again, we are streaming live, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. I would love it if you'd spread that link with around. Give it to friends. We used to joke, tell a friend, make an enemy. But I don't really think it works that way. Again, you can also use the music shows. The music shows are a nice, great way, nice, sweet way to get the medicine in. Harvey makes landfall again in western Louisiana as rain pummels the Gulf Coast. Outdated photo wrongly suggests Obama is at a food shelter in Houston. The fake news war memes rage on and on and on. And actually, usually, we can count on our friend Citizens Gateway in the chat to kind of cut through the bullshit. Harvey is a weapon of mass distraction. Maybe you've even seen recently, and again, no disrespect to anybody out there. I've seen pretty amazing, heartwarming, heartbreaking videos and photos and things you don't even have to look for it. Of course, you're just scrolling through your feed. Seen a lot of animals rescued. But in an area known for natural disasters. Did we make this reference yesterday on the show? I know it's a little dicey at times, but Ron Paul talked years ago about why do we subsidize people to continually rebuild and rejoin a place we know is going to get destroyed by another hurricane in a couple years. UN condemns North Korea's latest missile test, but takes no action. Please, UN, save us. That was the theme of yesterday's episode, wasn't it? Kremlin says it got the Trump Tower email but didn't respond, and definitely talking about this tomorrow. Broad coalition of evangelicals release the Nashville Statement. No, that's not a cool new album from Jason Isbell. His is Nashville Sound. Nashville Statement is the church reaffirming their hateful ways. They're getting pretty loose on it. Because that's what happens as the years go by, and you gotta loosen your strictures because you need more suckers in. That's why the military's filled with illegal felon gangbangers. And religion and military acts like they care about homosexuals and different people. Now, very important, my friends, we always got to look at the fact-check sidebar. Arpaio falsely ties conviction to Obama administration. That's from PolitiFact. Did a Catholic school in California remove religious statues from its campus? That's from Snopes. Orlando Bloom, are you two-timing Katy Perry? That's from Gossip Cop. And we talked about the misleading Kim Trail Kelly ad yesterday. That one's still hanging around. But the Zodiac killers claim that 2/3 of the Hurricane Sandy bill had nothing to do with Hurricane Sandy. Washington Compost says that's a lie. Now, all the stories we're going to talk about, just as always, every day, Whether it's geopolitics, cyberspace war, food world order, holy hexes, or media memes, we tweet out the stories we're going to talk about an hour before showtime. And you can get those on the tweets. And as I always remind you, you do not have to have a Twitter account. Just go to twitter.com/MediaMonarchy and you can see all my tweets. It'll say, here's the link list for your morning monarchy on the air in 1 hour. And it'll say, #food world order. You'll also find each and every morning, except for this morning, I guess I didn't actually do it. You'll find an invite to the chat. We're on Discord. We're using it for the time being. I love the idea of just building our own chat. That's in the works as well. All right, my friends, let's get into the delicious, nutritious Food World Order menu. Amazon has officially owned Whole Foods for like a day, 2 days. But early channel checks suggest they've already slashed in-store prices by nearly 50% on certain products, which is causing some heartburn for grocery bond investors. Of course, if we owned 6 to 8 year paper in a business competing with a company who has demonstrated willingness to consistently lose money for as long as it takes to gain market share, we'd be a little worried too. And we see this MO. We see it in other places. That's exactly how Starbucks has completely, essentially destroyed independent coffee mom and pop places in America. It's called loss leader. Now, there's different ways you can kind of define the term loss leader. But it's basically the idea that a store puts something out that they know loses money, but it's worth it in the long run. You can essentially think of nearly every Starbucks location as a loss leader. It's there to take the other places out of business. It might be losing money in the moment, but they think about the long con. Again, we always remind you, they tell you to live every day like it's your last, but they got long, multi-generational serial killer plans. As has been noted, early examples observed at the Whole Foods store on 57th in Manhattan indicated price cuts of up to 43%. Now, something you can definitely note when we're talking about prices at Whole Foods in Manhattan and California, they're already going to be skewed a little heavy. So they're going to be able to tout these things and say, oh, look how low the price is. They're down to what regular people would consider regular grocery prices.
Amazon recently purchased Whole Foods for $13.7 billion in a high-profile sale. The purchase was finalized on Monday, and the companies promised that shoppers would see lower prices in all stores immediately. A reporter from lifehacker.com visited a Whole Foods location in California and confirmed that prices have been lowered in all departments. A rotisserie chicken is now selling for $9.99. That's down from $13.99. Organic Fuji apples were $2.99 a pound and are now $1.99 a pound. Some items have only been discounted by 50 cents, such as $3.65 Everyday Value Organic Salted Butter and Organic Vitamin D Milk. A shopper's favorite, $3.65 Everyday Value Crunchy Almond Butter is now selling for $6.99, down from $7.99. A major price drop occurred in the fish section, with Atlantic salmon fillet dropping from $14.99 per pound to $9.99 per pound, and tilapia fillets dropping from $11.99 per pound to $7.99 per pound. The company plans to continue reducing prices, and $3.65 Everyday Value products will also be available for purchase on Amazon.com.
Well, there you go. That's quite the price trick for you. And again, you guys, I provide my own music bed. You guys don't have to do that. Now, we've always hated the whole paycheck phrase, because that's a way to basically deride the idea that buying food that doesn't have a bunch of poisons and chemicals in it, that's just stupid. But let's look at two different takes on this story. Slightly different. As again noted in the chat, they'll drop prices till a few more corporations claim bankruptcy, then prices will rise once their competition is dead. Meanwhile, it appears as if they're just reducing some overpriced New York City area prices to countrywide median prices. I live in a non-Fed money spigot area, and the whole new Whole Foods low prices are almost exactly what I pay for most of those same items at the priciest local supermarkets. The only outlier I see is the beef, but it is only local, grass-fed, both terms that can be gamed to introduce lower quality meat than beef labeled USDA organic. competition in price is great. However, Amazon's going to learn quickly that supermarket margins are razor thin already. Their warehouse distro delivery model for hard goods just doesn't translate to perishable items like produce, meat, dairy. The prediction is that the Whole Foods acquisition will be a money loser, and it will relatively quickly and be quietly jettisoned back into the wild as a standalone company or be acquired at extreme discount by another chain whose core competency is actually groceries. New York City, LA, San Francisco Whole Foods are all loss leaders. That's how that all works. Now, as has been noted, and I'm not sure if Walmart still claims the title, but it wasn't very long before Walmart was the biggest seller of organic foods in America because they just want to sell you shit. If you suddenly said, I only want to buy Beanie Babies and packs of Benson and Hedges, they go, okay. You want them? Here you go. People want organic food. Walmart will provide it. So will your other local stores. Now, fortunately, we've noted again here time and time, and I used to work for them, and they are making the slow, steady, consistent race towards the bottom. Worked for a local company here called New Seasons Market. It was started by 10 Oregon families. They used to run a store called Nature's. And they started New Seasons Market in the early 2000s. Now in 2017, all the original members have all sold out their shares. They've all left the company. It's now being run by a former Starbucks CEO, and they've broken all the original company promises of, we're an Oregon-only business. You can now find New Seasons Markets up in Washington, I think almost in Idaho, and now in San Francisco. So they're pretty much abandoning all of their missions. Again, you can look at all the things you used to admire. God, Cassie and I can look at a lot of the things that we've worked for and admired here in Portland. And over our 12 years, you can see, oh man, well, looks like we got in there just in time before it did its slow, inevitable slide towards the bottom. But because organic is wanted, you're going to be able to find it in more different other stores. Maybe you can find it in your locally owned stores. We've talked again about the battles back and forth between non-GMO and organic. And yes, the numbers can be gamed. The labels can be gamed. But non-GMO doesn't mean it's not covered with a bunch of pesticides. And just because it doesn't have any organic labeling at all doesn't mean that it isn't good. It might mean that it's a small company who knows they're organic. They're just not going to pay the money to get the government label. There's a lot of investigation, a lot of research to do in all this stuff. Oh, good Lord. And then coming soon, the battle for the leadership of the organic beer market. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. It is Wednesday, August 30th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. This is a Food World Order episode, and we are front-loaded with the economics of food. The price of a pack of cigarettes in New York City is going up to at least $13. And the number of places you can buy them is going down under new legislation signed Monday by Mayor Bill de Blasio.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has boosted the minimum cost of a packet of cigarettes to $13, or around €10.80. The price hike of 24% is part of the U.S. city's biggest squeeze on smoking in recent years.
We know this works. We know that people make decisions based on their economic reality. By increasing the price, fewer and fewer people will choose to use these products. And we think that alone is going to reduce smoking by about 6%.
It seems the World Health Organization agrees. It advocates elevating the tax on cigarettes as the most effective way to stem tobacco use. Norway is the most expensive place in Europe to buy cigarettes, based on figures for the most widely sold brand worldwide. Statistics suggest smokers there spend 0.39% of the average monthly wage on cigarettes, and 24% of adults smoke. In Ukraine, where cigarettes are cheapest, the percentages are similar. Tobacco industry analysts claim de Blasio's move will have little impact and say consumers will still buy regardless of price increases.
The new minimum price law, which takes effect June 1st, so you got a lot of time. Gangsters have a lot of time to buy up a lot of cigarettes because, oh gosh, I wonder how this is going to affect the black gangster market. So the new minimum price law of $13 takes effect June 1st, 2018, will make New York the most expensive place in America to buy cigarettes. I remember when I used to go visit and stay with my brother when he was living in Manhattan. I would buy a carton of cigarettes in West Virginia and take them up to New York with me. There's no way I was going to buy cigarettes there. Even back in the mid to late 90s. It was like $6. Screw you. Let's continue to look at the economics of food. And already in the chat, it's like, well, what's going to be the next war? Going to be the fast food wars? And of course, the, at this moment, unanswerable musical question, who's getting all this tax revenue? I know here in Oregon, some of the tax on cannabis used to go pay for smokers that are sick. How you like that? Let's head over to Chicago. We should probably be packing. But when a local government leader passed the deciding vote on a penny per ounce soda tax, she said it'd generate enough money to balance the county budget while making people in Chicago and the surrounding suburbs healthier. But so far, the tax in Chicago seems mostly to have created problems for Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle, who until recently was so popular, many considered her the only possible candidate who could unseat Rombo. Mr. Never Let a Crisis Go to Waste. Mr. Dual Israeli Citizenship. Mr. My brother runs Hollywood, my other brother runs the medical industry. Opponents have filed lawsuits. A federal agency warned Illinois could lose millions in funding for food stamp benefits, and store owners have complained of plummeting sales. There are signs angry residents could hold it against Preckwinkle and other pro-tax commissioners seeking re-election next year. It feels like every time you turn around, they have their hand in your pocket, says Jim Taylor of Chicago, who was pretty much echoing the words of the great DMX. Every time you turn around, cats got their hands out wanting something from me. Jim Taylor in Chicago paid $2.56 in new taxes for two 128-ounce plastic jugs of Diet iced tea at a grocery store west of the city. It's ridiculous. They should all go. Now, billionaire Michael Bloomberg, who tried unsuccessfully to ban giant sodas as the mayor of New York, is trying to sway public opinion in Preckwinkle's favor. His super PAC started running TV and radio ads defending the tax as a way to reduce an epidemic of childhood obesity and other health conditions. Groups advocating for retailers in the beverage industry also have been spending on advertising and lawsuits. Those are two great tastes that taste great together, right? Advertising and lawsuits. We would invoke St. Hicks and say, if you're in either of those fields, you should probably top yourself. Cook County is the latest place where multi-million-dollar battles are playing out. It's all the groups going to battle. All the different NGOs and think tanks and groups and tax-funded and tax-free groups. Like the tax-free church across the street from me that constantly has construction going on. Must be nice not to have to pay your theft so you can do constant reconstruction on your little church. Hashtag Peak Portland. Political groups spent more than $3 million ahead of a special election early this year in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where voters rejected a tax. Last year, similar taxes were approved in cities including San Francisco, Oakland, and Philadelphia. So that's kind of interesting. And again, we've been talking about this. We might end up in Colorado, we might end up in New Mexico, but it's probably happening within the next 12 or so months. San Francisco, Oakland, Philadelphia, those are pretty much neutered liberal cities, aren't they? Maybe Santa Fe still has a little bit of balls. And maybe a bunch of fat people who love soda. Cook County, which includes Chicago, became the largest jurisdiction in America to enact the tax on sugary and artificially sweetened beverages when the board voted to approve it in November. It applies not just to soda, but also to sports drinks, iced tea, and lemonade, and comes on top of beverage taxes imposed by Illinois and Chicago. Supporters said it would bring in an estimated $225 million annually, which will be used for what? Preckwinkle says without the tax, the county would be forced to make draconian cuts to the county jail, the prosecutor's office, county hospitals, and clinics. The plan was seen as a tax of choice that would also reduce the amount of county's health and hospital system spending treating sugar consumption-related diseases such as diabetes and tooth decay. So the tax happened in Chicago. Chicago area soda tax may carry political price for backers. And we mentioned it. So we'll head back over there as we hit the presstelegram.com. And again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes, my friends. My fiends. Someone asked yesterday in the chat, it's like, why do you say fiends all the time? It's like, because I get tired of saying all, my friends. I sound like a preacher or something. For the first time, Californians would pay a tax on drinking water. Now, this ain't sugary aspartame soda garbage. This is just plain old filled with pharmaceuticals and perchlorate rocket fuel. It's just regular old drinking water. 95 cents per month under legislation to fix hundreds of public water systems with unsafe tap water, a problem that's most pervasive in rural areas with agricultural runoff. Senate Bill 623, backed by a strange bedfellows coalition of the agricultural lobby and environmental groups, but opposed by water districts. It would generate over $2 billion in the next 15 years to clean up contaminated groundwater and improve faulty water systems and wells. My message is short and direct. We are not Flint, Michigan. Co-author Senator Robert Hertzberg, Democrat of Van Nuys, said at a Wednesday rally outside the Capitol where demonstrators held signs reading, "Clean water is not a luxury. Water is a human right." So that actually answers our questions in the chat. Well, what war is coming next? I think we've said it for a long time, even on New World Next Week, the water wars. Ironically, many Californians are more aware of the crisis in Flint, where state and local officials in 2015 told residents about lead contamination in the drinking water after claiming it was safe to drink, than about the water problems in their home state, said the measure's main author, Senator Bill Monning, Democrat out of Monterey. He called this a, quote, pivotal time in our state's history to do the right thing. Now, what does that say about states? And that's even what I've wondered about our own coverage here in Portland of Hurricane Harvey. Now, again, a human tragedy, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who know people in Texas. We do know people in Texas who have had to have family helped and rescued. But it's that sort of round-the-clock coverage. And it's all coming from the same handful of corporate outlets. This was the thing I guess I really realized working at the commercial radio station. They knew that the internet had eaten their lunch. And all the corporate media, whether it was the crap we were spewing out, or whether it was up on the TV, or the satellite news feed, they want everybody having the same couple of conversations. Let's all argue about what color you think this stupid dress is. Let's all argue about this idiot lady who thinks she's black. They want everybody kind of back in the box. So it's not a surprise that people in one state know more about some fantastical story. And again, I don't necessarily mean that the Flint story is fantastical and blown out of proportion. But if it bleeds, it leads, so to speak. So think more about what's going on in your town. Okay, let's call it the White Bronco Syndrome. That's a pretty good way to put that. I like that. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. It is Wednesday, August 30th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato, your host, webmaster, DJ, and so very much more from the mighty MediaMonarchy.com kingdom. We are actually coming up on our 12th birthday next month. What are we? We're about 14 days away, 2 weeks away. We appreciate your support. MediaMonarchy.com/support. That keeps us going and growing, moving and grooving, my friends. Hershey Trust, the charitable trust, which controls chocolate maker Hershey Corporation, said last Wednesday it would sell 4.5 million shares of Hershey's common stock. The trust said it would sell 3 million Hershey shares to Morgan Stanley and an additional 1.5 million shares to the Hershey Company. Hershey, the maker of Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Hershey Kisses, said in a separate statement that it will buy the $1.5 million stock from the trust for a $106 per share, or about $159 million. After all that, Hershey stock closed at $107.44 last Wednesday. Hershey rejected a $23 billion bid last summer from Oreo cookie owner Mondelez, as the Hershey Trust, which can veto a deal, was embroiled in a row with its overseer that resulted in departures at the trust and Hershey's board. You know you're dealing with international elites when they use the word row. I often have to point out that's a British word that means fight, and it looks like row, but it's row. Earlier this year, the Hershey Trust added former Goldman Sachs partner James Katzman to its ranks. The trust has also added Melissa Peoples-Fulmore, a Milton Hershey School alumnus and education professional, and maybe Jan Loeffler-Bergen, a trained social worker and chief executive officer of nonprofit health provider Lancaster General Health, as Hershey trustees. As if you needed any other reason not to eat that watered-down, sugary crap. What about the fact that it's pretty much run by Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley? How you like that? What? Yeah, Goldman, they're going to liquidate Hershey till it's all sold off. Then maybe Mondelez will be able to buy them all up. Murders and executions, mergers and acquisitions. Hershey Trust to sell 4.5 million shares of Hershey chocolate. So we continue to look at the economics of food, and we now take a little more international look. That's all so far been the economics of USSA food. Now, let's go abroad a little bit. As a self-proclaimed defender of the poor, Venezuelan ruler Nicolas Maduro is actually taking advantage of shortages across the country by marking up goods for his own profit through a company involved in the sale of the country's subsidized food program, the unfortunately named CLAP. In August, Mexican newspaper Excelsior published a report claiming Maduro sold food in Venezuela with a surcharge of up to 112%. According to the Mexican Tariff Information System, the Venezuelan government paid companies that operate in Mexico $16 American dollars for 11 basic products that were later resold in packages for $34. Between January and May, Venezuela purchased over 414 billion tons of vegetable oil, rice, canned tuna, sugar, black beans, lentils, white corn, mayonnaise, pasta, and tomato sauce from Mexico for the CLAP program. Among the companies chosen by Maduro's regime to import food from Mexico were Postar Intertrade Limited, whose owner is Samark Lopez Bello, a figurehead working under Venezuelan Vice President Tarek El Aissami. Haven't heard that name mentioned. He's probably going to show up in the news a little bit more, because I'm sure he'll probably be the next bit of crud to rise to the top of the swamp. As they're noting in the chat, Maduro will eventually be Chavez'd. Group Grand Limited has also been accused of selling products at a premium. Attorney General Luisa Ortega-Diaz said Maduro is the owner of the company, which serves as an intermediary for buying food in Mexico and selling it in Venezuela. According to Excelsior, cross-referencing the price invoices revealed that a CLAP food box is worth half what Venezuela charges for it. The only products that Venezuelans pay a fair price for are milk powder, sugar, and vegetable oil. On Wednesday, August 23rd, Ortega-Diaz, who fled Venezuela after the regime raided her home, said that through Rodolfo Reyes, Alvaro Pulido Vargas, and Alex Saab are listed as owners of some company serving CLAP, the company really belongs to Maduro. So food importer that profits from Venezuela's hunger crisis, shocker, is maybe really owned by the president. Now, how does that relate to back here? The discussions, the arguments that are going on as it relates to Harvey, as it relates to price gouging, as it relates to supply and demand. Let's think about that as we continue to look around the world. A little bit of, oh gosh, it kind of feels like there's pressure from below, but it almost kind of feels like there's pressure from above as well. In Puerto Rico now, resistance to the dumping of toxic coal ash in the southern town of Pinellas spreading across the island. In the capital, San Juan, activists wearing hazmat suits poured buckets of coal ash on the steps of the Capitol building last Thursday morning in protest. Then, the next day, over 100 cops, including a militarized strike force, mobilized to stop residents of Guayama from blockading trucks carrying toxic ash as they left the coal-fired power plant en route to Pinellas. Less than an hour later, 200 more cops arrived to stop residents from blockading the trucks as they arrived to dump the coal ash there. At least 25 activists have been arrested blockading the trucks so far this month as resistance grows in Puerto Rico over the dumping of toxic coal ash.
Last week in Puerto Rico, there was an unusual protest in the capital, San Juan. Activists poured buckets of toxic coal ash from the island's only coal-fired power plant onto the steps of the Capitol building to draw attention to the growing struggle of Puerto Ricans across the island who want the plant closed and are blockading the trucks dumping the poisonous waste near their town.
Al problema que se ha generado por parte de las decisiones The government of Puerto Rico is creating a health problem, an environmental problem, and a problem for the future and the coming generations. We want Puerto Rico to close the coal-fired power plant. The only ashes that we want are those of the Fiscal Control Board.
My name is Jocelyn Velasquez from the group The Promises Are Over. They are closing schools, they will be reducing pensions for retired workers and reducing working days for public employees. They are reducing health services, and we could keep listing all of the things they are going to be reduced because there is a crisis and we need to pay. But the Fiscal Control Board doesn't come only as a political body to collect the debt. They come with an ideology that turns all of our natural resources, all of our land, water, and sun into one more commodity to pay the bondholders.
In Puerto Rico's southern town of Peñuelas, residents have been fighting to stop a private company named Applied Energy Systems, or AES, from dumping the coal ash in a landfill next to their community. Several times a week, the government is forced to deploy hundreds of police officers to break the residents' blockades.
My name is Yanina Moreno. I am one of the spokespeople from the camp against the ashes in Peñuela. When the trucks drive by, they are speeding from the time they leave the plant in Guayama, and the police create a line of police cars, a whole perimeter to protect the street. In order to deposit the ashes, they have to mobilize a whole operation, a whole mobilization of police, because otherwise they would not be able to enter. Without the police, the trucks would never be able to enter Peñuela.
University of Puerto Rico biology professor Arturo Masol has been studying the health and environmental impacts of this coal ash.
The health impacts of the ashes can range from allergies to respiratory problems to issues as dramatic as birth defects or spontaneous abortions. It is a hazardous material. It is a non-biodegradable material, and about 600 tons are generated daily in Puerto Rico. So the volume generated is provoking a severe disposal problem for Puerto Rico and for any other place where these ashes are produced.
The Vieques, Puerto Rico Naval Training Range was located on the island of Vieques, just outside the main island of Puerto Rico. The training range was used for military training at the island. The military installation ended operations in 2001, and there was a military presence on the island from 1941 until 2003. If we click down, let's look at, contamination and health effects. A survey by the Puerto Rico Health Department revealed that the cancer rate in Vieques is 20% higher than mainland Puerto Rico. And that might have something to do with the military testing, depleted uranium, nuclear target shipwreck, sonic booms. That's not to mention the fish, and the shellfish, and the air, and the groundwater. So we'll include that in the show notes as well. United States Navy in Puerto Rico. West Virginia-izing Puerto Rico. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy. It's a little depressing, as the case may be at times. I'm James Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, your host, webmaster, DJ, and so very much more. Let's hop over to Cornucopia. Almost all the beef available in supermarkets across the country come from sick cows that pose a significant risk to human health, so says the Cornucopia Institute. They've just released a video on where their burger meat comes from called Sick Cows, Sick People, the Grass-Fed Antidote, showing just possibly how typically unhealthy beef production is and what consumers can do to find excellent meat for their Labor Day barbecues. Oh, that's right, Labor Day coming up. I guess that's a deprogramming note. We will be off the air Monday, essentially. If it is a big old holiday, we'll probably take that holiday as well. Sick cows, sick people, and that's the overuse of antibiotics, and this is the struggle of the factory farmed world. So we'll include that in the show notes, but continue to move along on our Food World Order stories. And let's see. So we began with pretty much food economics. That went all around the world, all around America, then to all around the world. So the last few stories here, it'll maybe in some ways start to set us up for our Holy Hexes stories tomorrow. We hop from Cornucopia over to Sustainable Pulse. This is one of the great places you can, sign up for the email. You get them in your box. Cornell's University. Their plans to release genetically modified moths in New York State totally ignores the existing evidence of failure, which shows the GMO pests will damage the broccoli and cabbages they are supposed to protect. Diamondback moth caterpillars, agricultural pests, which eat brassica crops, including cabbages and broccoli. Cornell plans multiple experimental releases of up to 30,000 GM male moths a week over a 2-year period at its New York State Agricultural Experiment Station. The GM Diamondback moths are produced by UK-headquartered company Oxitec, which was bought by Intrexon for $160 million in 2015, despite its lack of revenue and commercial products. Oxitec claims its technology builds on the sterile insect technique, in which sterile pests are released to mate with wild ones and suppress the population. Think about that on a wider scale. However, Oxitec's GM male moths are not sterile. They mate and reproduce. The female offspring of these matings do not die until the larval stage, with male offspring surviving until adulthood. This means that GM caterpillars will contaminate crops where the GM males are released and cause significant damage to the crop that would not occur if the released insects were sterile. The only scientific paper published on the effects of releasing these GM moths shows that even in greenhouse experiments, which are much more effective than open releases needed to continue for 10 weeks to suppress a target moth population, during which crop damage would occur. In the reported experiments, GM males were released in ratios of between 10 and 40 GM males to 1 wild male to suppress the population. In further experiments, including broccoli plants, the paper reports that plants were replaced after 4 weeks or when defoliated due to larval feeding by cutting them at their base and placing the replacement plants to allow larvae to transfer. Cornell's plans to release these GM moths ignore the only published scientific evidence about them, which shows that significant crop damage will occur, said Dr. Helen Wallace, director of Gene Watch UK. Hey, but don't worry, the planned releases of GM moths have been approved by the United States Department of Agriculture, and the first phase of testing is thought to be imminent. Previous proposals by Oxitec to release genetically modified diamondback moths in the UK, GM olive flies in Spain, GM Mediterranean fruit flies, the medfly in Brazil, were all halted. These GM pests all use the same genetically engineered trait, which kills the female GM pest at the late larval stage. Expert advisors at the European Food Safety Authority also warned about the problem of crop damage 7 years ago, in 2010. Claims by Oxitec that the release will reduce the use of pesticides also failed to take account of the existence of other pests, which will continue to require spraying in any future commercial use by conventional farmers. Cornell's diamondback moth releases are not a credible approach to tackling this pest. The moths are just another GM failure. The releases are a desperate attempt by a failing company to convince investors that it has a worthwhile product. So we already know they're going to fail before they even do it. Should probably read their Sun Tzu. Or maybe they already have read their Sun Tzu and they're not the ones that are losing before the battle has started, then we are. And it comes back to peak Portland, my friends. On August 27th, the inaugural Portland Taco Festival canceled its second and final date due to a snowball effect of problems. On day one, the festival reportedly sold out of tacos in around 90 minutes, causing, quote, anger and chaos among paying attendees. Anger and chaos being wildly popular here in peak Portland. Crowds escalated to hundreds to the point that the police came to keep things orderly. Some voiced discontent about the overall value of the event on Twitter. Hashtag Portland Taco Festival equals not worth it. $15 entry gets you a 2.5 hour wait for mediocre tacos that you still have to pay for. Others focused on the lack of organization. The festival was so terrible, 2-hour wait for taco, you can't try more than one place unless you want to wait 4 to 5 hours. But then, the festival faced trouble before it even served its first taco. The Mitu digital media company called out the event. That's what everyone does now, too. You're being called out for representing another example of the Pacific Northwest tone-deaf casual racism through its offensive advertisements, namely digital ads on Facebook featuring imagery like hipsters posing behind hard-shell taco cutouts and white boys donning lucha libre masks. Sorry, it's got the photo here. Hell, that might be our cover art. Attendees and others created a social media storm of related complaints. That is actually one of our best growing exports here in Portland. Meanwhile, Denver, Colorado-based Connected Soul and Another Brother Productions organized the Portland Taco Festival in response to the heavy fallout on-site and online. Organizers Timothy Agrello and Stephen Jones published an open apology letter. In it, they claimed the festival did not actually run out of food and address the charges of cultural insensitivity. Regarding comments about the festival's theme, cultural appropriation, and race, we take these comments very seriously, particularly in the current political climate. Taco Fest is founded and run by myself, of Mexican descent, my partner an African American, and a very diverse mixed-race team. This is something dear to me, as it is my culture that is in question. Though the Portland Taco Festival sold tickets through an online broker with a no-refund policy, it'll give refunds to anybody who purchased a ticket to Sunday's event. Eater PDX, which is where we're grabbing this from, that food website that showed up all around the world. It's usually yourcitiesname.eater.com or pdx.eater.com. They reached out to the event organizers for further comment. Yes, Portland is the city just a couple of months ago completely crapped its Huggies over 2 white girls that started a burrito store. Honestly, I would imagine things must be going pretty well if you have the time to argue about who's allowed to make tacos. Those sounds like arguments that, I don't know, like well-heeled elites could make. Last couple of Food World Order stories as we head from Peak Portland. Oh, one of these days we go back to West Virginia, where some residents see empty, abandoned buildings in McDowell County. Joel McKinney sees the future of food. He sees rows upon rows of stacked beds of lettuce floating on foam boards receiving light by LEDs. He sees a way to feed his community schools and turn a profit at the same time. He established Roadside Farms in 2014 using an untraditional farming technique to bring a localized food economy to McDowell County, West Virginia, and help provide more fresh food for his mom's food bank. Now he's going to take it even a step further. McKinney grew up in McDowell, where his mother runs the 5 Loaves and 2 Fishes food bank in a former grocery store where his dad retired from the coal fields and gives tours of an abandoned mine on occasion. Like many of his classmates, McKinney left the county after high school. He said he joined the Navy to see the world and find opportunity elsewhere. At 23, he got out and jumped from job to job in West Virginia and then tried to return to military life in a different branch. Bored with civilian life, he signed up for the Army. But the day he was scheduled to be sworn in, saved his life. He received a job offer from a local railroad firm and changed his mind. New job kept him busy, traveled around, and he saw West Virginia. Farmer in Welch sees local food as key to revitalizing coal town business, and that's what's going to happen. It's not going to be a bunch of Trump, blah, blah, blah. It ain't going to be the Boy Scouts. It ain't going to be coal. It's going to be food, and it's going to be cannabis. And the sooner you guys get on it, the sooner you're going to be in better shape. I'd really like to think you guys could get all that shit squared away before Cassie and I move back there in a couple of decades. Last couple of stories here actually take a much turn for the darker. Flame retardant chemicals used in products like yoga mats, sofas, car seats, and even phone cases are, of course, being linked to infertility, according to a new study. Researchers at Harvard say organophosphate flame retardants, PFRs, found in a patient's body lowered their chances of a successful pregnancy.
Are yoga mats hurting your chances of getting pregnant? Researchers at Harvard University have found a potential link between products that contain certain chemicals and infertility in women. Among the products in which scientists discovered this link are yoga mats. Organophosphate flame retardants, otherwise known as PFRs, can be found in products that use polyurethane foam, such as car seats, sofas, and yoga mats. These PFRs can be absorbed by the body through physical contact, and they also migrate out of objects into the air. Researchers analyzed urine samples from 211 women and found that more than 80% of its participants had traces of PFRs in their systems. Women with higher concentrations of the chemicals are said to be 40% less likely to become pregnant or to have a live birth compared to those with lower concentrations of the chemicals. Flame retardant penta-BDE was phased out more than a decade ago after it was found to cause negative health effects. PFRs were introduced as a safer alternative. However, these latest studies have shown that the supposedly safer flame retardant may still cause hormone disruption.
What a shock. All the good things you're supposed to use are actually terrible for you. All the things you want to swaddle your baby with. All the things you want to put next to your face or your ass. Now it's chemicals in yoga mats and sofas causing infertility, and I gotta say, my amazing wife, Cassie, she's been hip to this for a long-ass time. It's one of the main reasons the way we make our purchases, or rather don't make our purchases. In a lot of ways, the older products are going to be the ones that don't have a bunch of chemicals in them, so that people don't spontaneously combust. I mean, that's the question. That's in the chat. Why do yoga mats have to be flame retardant? It's kind of depressing. Like when you remove meat from a man's diet. The current issue of the prestigious Journal of Affective Disorders includes the report titled Vegetarian Diets and Depressive Symptoms Among Men. Mental health benefits and risks of vegetarian diets are subjects about which little is known, according to the article. The authors are Joseph R. Hibron. He works for the National Institute of Health in Rockville, Maryland, and a couple of other people that work for University of Bristol in the UK. The Journal of Affective Disorders publishes research about all sorts of affective disorders, including depression, mania, anxiety, and panic. The authors say men who self-identify for their vegetarian dietary habits may also self-identify for their own significant depressive symptoms. And overall, the NIH Bristol researchers found vegetarians had higher depression scores than non-vegetarians. Self-report data from 9,668 adult male partners of pregnant women in the Avon longitudinal study of parents and children included identification as vegetarian or vegan, dietary frequency data, and the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. Vegetarian men have more depressive symptoms and adjustment for socio-demographic factors. So we'll have to think about that one. And then finally, I'm running low on time. This is pretty much where we put our Harvey coverage. And this is the point where all I'll say is a report from ENE News. Warning, credible threat of severe accident at 2 nuclear reactors due to Hurricane Harvey. Clear potential for major disaster. Plant could be overwhelmed by raging floodwaters. Officials refuse to provide public with information. Now, as we talk about this and think about this, it's another one of those situations where, again, it happens over and over and over again. It happens over and over and over again, and yet we continually rebuild and we continually go back to the place. Again, it's out of the Bible. The wise man does not build his house upon the sand, so let's have a brief history of Texas Gulf Coast hurricanes.
The Gulf Coast's hurricane history begins with the deadliest storm in U.S. history. The 1900 Galveston hurricane, a Category 4 storm, ripped across Galveston, flooding the island with a 15-foot storm surge. Nearly every structure was destroyed or damaged. With no sophisticated warning system, the U.S. Weather Bureau urged people to seek higher ground, but the warning went largely unheeded, and as many as 8,000 people perished. The second worst storm to ever hit Texas, Hurricane Carla in 1961. The massive Category 4 storm made landfall near Corpus Christi, but the upper Texas coast took a beating too. More than 100 buildings in Galveston were destroyed. The hurricane was so big, its massive impacts were felt in Beaumont, 180 miles from landfall. Carla did nearly $500 million in damage. The Gulf Coast remained relatively quiet until 1983. When record-setting Hurricane Alicia barreled across Galveston. Alicia, a Category 3 hurricane with winds of 115 miles per hour, was the costliest Texas tropical storm to date, causing nearly $2 billion in damages, 21 people were killed, 2,000 homes were destroyed, and nearly 1 million people lost power for days. Alicia was the biggest test yet for Galveston's seawall, which held firm and saved the coast from even more devastation. One of the worst storms to ever hit southeast Texas, at least in terms of rainfall, wasn't even a hurricane. It was Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. Allison sat over Houston for days, dumping as much as 40 inches of rain in some places. The worst flooding was in Houston, where 70,000 homes were flooded, along with businesses and hospitals. 23 people died in Texas, most from drowning, and it caused $9 billion in damages. Allison was the first tropical storm to have its name retired without ever reaching hurricane strength. In 2005, with the nightmarish images of Hurricane Katrina still fresh in their minds, Millions of Houstonians tried to evacuate ahead of Hurricane Rita, which was a monster, a Category 5 hurricane that appeared to be headed straight to the Bayou City. Every evacuation route from I-45 to State Highway 146 was pushed over capacity, with evacuees running out of gas or having their cars overheat, forcing them to sleep along the highways. Rita finally made landfall on September 24th, well east of Houston, near Sabine Pass, as a Category 3 hurricane. The biggest impacts for Houston? Some toppled trees, scattered power outages, and empty gas stations. 3 years later, Hurricane Ike slammed the Gulf Coast near Galveston in the early morning hours of September 13th as a strong Category 2 storm, with winds of 110 miles per hour and devastating storm surge that topped 20 feet in some places. Ike smashed coastal homes, flooded thousands of other homes, and knocked out power to millions of customers for weeks. Nearly 50 people were killed in Texas. And with nearly $30 billion in damages, it remains the third costliest hurricane in U.S. history, behind Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy in 2012.
So there you have it. Past is prologue, my friends. Hurricane Harvey might go nuclear, but it sure ain't the first time. We might have more coverage of Hurricane Harvey on tomorrow's episode of Holy Hexes when we get into the really dark and disturbing underbelly of the world. And again, everything we say and play will be included in the show notes. We're going out with brand new music from a UK duo called Warm Digits with an appropriately enough song called Growth of Raindrops. And it actually features St. Etienne vocalist Sarah Cracknell helping out on vocals. But first, like we just said, past is prologue. Let's look at this day in history. August 30th. It is August 30th, right? It is August 30th. Good grief. August 30th, 1918. After speaking at a factory in Moscow, Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin is shot twice by Fanya Kaplan, a member of the Social Revolutionary Party.
45 days after he had gotten rid of the Tsar, Lenin was making a speech at a workers' rally. As he left the podium, a woman detached herself from onlookers and fired 3 pistol shots at close range, hitting her target with 2 of them, but none were immediately fatal.
Lenin's would-be assassin was a woman named Fanny Kaplan, a young member of the Social Revolutionary Party. That party was the leading contender for influence among the Bolsheviks' constituencies, workers, peasants, soldiers.
Kaplan was arrested and promptly executed without trial. Lenin used the attempt to settle old scores, avenging the attack via Stalin with open, systematic assassination.
Lenin, as a result of the assassination attempt, was sick for the rest of his reign and probably died several years earlier than he would have.
Lenin was seriously wounded but survived the attack. The assassination attempt set off a wave of reprisals by the Bolsheviks against the social revolutionaries and other political opponents. Thousands were executed as Russia fell deeper into civil war. Past is prologue. I don't know, I'm not sure if Stalin paid for that or the Rothschilds, I'm not sure. It's also worth noting, again, from our smart folks in the chat, apocalypse is Greek for revelation. Democracy Now! And all the other places saying, oh, it's apocalyptic, this storm, Harvey's apocalyptic. Except I just played a clip for you that showed it's not, and it's happened time and time and time again. Maybe the revelation is that past is prologue, and the government will not be there to save you. Let's continue to look at this day in history. August 30th, 1945, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, General Douglas MacArthur, lands at Atsugi Air Force Base. As, of course, World War II grinds to a close. On that same day, the Allied Control Council governing Germany after World War II comes into being. August 30th, 1963, the Moscow-Washington hotline between the leaders of the U.S. and the Soviet Union goes into operation on this day. And a lot of albums actually came out. First of which, August 30th, 1965, Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited. In 67, Thurgood Marshall was confirmed as the first African-American justice of the Supreme Court on this day. And on this day in 68, the Byrds' Sweetheart of the Rodeo album was released. That's pretty much the blueprint of alt country. 1974, a powerful bomb explodes at the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries headquarters in Marunouchi, Tokyo. 8 are killed, 378 injured. Who did it? 8 left-wing activists arrested on May 19th, 1975 by Japanese authorities. August 30th, 1981, President Mohammad Ali Rajai and Prime Minister Mohammad Jaksad Bohanar of Iran are assassinated in a bombing committed by the People's Mujahideen of Iran. August 30th, 1989, Izzy Stradlin of Guns N' Roses gets arrested for creating a disturbance on an airline flight. 1991, dissolution of the Soviet Union as Azerbaijan declares independence from the Soviet Union. I think I told you, Cassie and I several years ago bought an old globe from Goodwill, and it's actually pre-fall of communism. So all the it's Turkmen SSR, Azerbaijan SSR. August 30th, 1992, the 11-day Ruby Ridge standoff, which of course began 11 days prior with the murder of Vicki Weaver, ends with Randy Weaver surrendering to federal authorities. And 2 debut albums came out on this day in 1994, Usher's self-titled debut and Oasis's debut, Definitely Maybe. Now published to Media Monarchy a decade ago today, that's right, we've been online since 9/11/05. Dutch royals caught revising Wikipedia. A Dutch royal couple acknowledges altering a Wikipedia entry about a 2003 scandal that forced the prince to renounce his claim to the throne. They just joined the CIA and Walmart and the rest of them, as we've told you recently. Past is prologue. Holy moly, quite a bit of birthdays today. Mary Shelley, Huey Long, Raymond Massey, Joan Blondell, Fred McMurray, Ted Williams, whose head is being propped up in a cryogenic lab with a tuna can as we speak. The late, great Kitty Wells. The late, not great Daryl Gates, who not only created the DARE program, but also helped run crack cocaine in L.A. Warren Buffett. John Phillips, he's from the Mamas and Papas and also a child molester. Congressman Cooter's birthday today. That's right, Ben Jones from the Dukes of Hazzard. It's also John McNally from The Searchers. Robert Crumb, Molly Ivins, Peggy Lipton from the Mod Squad, Lewis Black, Timothy Bottoms from The Paper Chase, Dave Brocky, a.k.a. the late, great Odorous Arungus from Gwar, born on this day. It's also Michael Chiklis' birthday, Lars Fredrickson from Rancid, Cameron Diaz, Lisa Ling from Channel 1, and Real Big Fish's Aaron Barrett. Now, we're doing a no new music week on your daily DJ set at noon. We're just playing some favorites and some classics while we get caught up on our new music. And I'll wet your whistle as we go out with today's Song of the Day from UK duo Warm Digits featuring St. Etienne's Sarah Cracknell on vocals. The song is Growth of Raindrops. And that's the Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy, my friends. For Wednesday, August 30th, 2017, I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for listening. And reminding you, as always, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
Like this.
listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.